So, good morning, everybody. It's another installment of Sisters of the Yam co-reading experience with me, Tumelo Mutaung, and Ngozi Chukura.
Hello.
Hey, say hi louder. I don't think they heard you. I want to take my volume up. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Morning.
Yo. So I'm gonna just get right into it, right? And read a piece from Between the Pillar and the Post. It's like a collection of plays and monologues. I got it when I was doing a course at the Market Theatre, but I wanna, so relevant, right? So this girl did this. I feel so bad because I forgot her name, but she did this monologue, right? That like was my ultimate favorite, and she did it so well, and I was just like, yes, gal, bring it. She did it with so much attitude, and I'm just gonna read it, right? So I'm just gonna read. I'm just gonna read the piece. It's called Fat Black Woman's Song, and it's by Napo Mashian. So the first time I heard the word fat pussy, I was sitting at the robots waiting for the lights to change. I noticed that around me were men of all sizes and white thin women dressed in professional attire, and they looked older, like real adults. I, on the other hand, black, wearing my nice, not so revealing mini skirt that said cute more than corporate. At 23 years old, at 23 years of age, I wondered if I appeared out of place to anyone else. A black woman, 40-something in cargo pants, a black man, 40-something in cargo pants, and sane looking at first glance, came way too close. I jumped. Then I tried to ease away unnoticed through the crowd to the opposite end. And that apparently was my big mistake. That's what's wrong with all you black bitches. That's why none of you can get a man. Damn, I was just trying to get a taste of you. I bet your fat pussy stinks too. That was so loud I could hear him over the traffic, the street vendors, and even the construction sites. The way he spat out fat pussy was harsh, and as if mine was the ugliest and most unprotected one. Truth is, no fat girl wants to admit that to weeping when they look in the mirror, and the creature that inspires horror and dismay looks right back at them. Or when there aren't enough spots for them, when there aren't enough shops for them, and how much trouble they have pulling up pantyhose or leggings or jeans over meaty thighs. What the world constantly wants to tell every fat girl is weight, how to lose it, self-esteem, how to gain it. I make no claim to do either. One of my favorite uncles used to tell me how growing up, his main goal was to have sex with every physical type of woman, except the MVV, Mooi van Ver. But as he got older and more mature, he knew that he loved big women, and that before photos in diet ads fascinated him, that he would kill for a woman with a belly, a butt, thighs, and lots of soft flesh to look at, touch and put his arms around. That he is completely obsessed with the thought of them getting fatter, outgrowing clothes, getting stuck, breaking chairs. My uncle somehow changed my perception of the norm and what beauty means to many people. So when I came of age, I was drawn to boys who didn't only prefer fat girls, but were ashamed who didn't only prefer fat girls, but were ashamed to be seen around the streets with them despite challenges that happen in the bedroom. I remember one experience with Obina, one of those boyfriends. During sex, he kept on taking pauses to collect himself and survey my surroundings. I realized that he was actually battling with the twisting climbs and the sudden valleys, the crags, the craters, and the amazing mountains he was busy exploring. The next time we were doing it, he was on his hands and knees, but not reaching the place. So I asked him if he had a GPS. I figured he had himself to blame for not stopping to ask for directions. So he confidently said with the absence of a GPS, he was looking more for some sort of maker, which with which to establish my marker with which to establish my coordinates. Any man probably feels confident once they have noticed that the horizon ahead of them, which is blocked by a pronounced weight, can lead straight to the north, where they can experience the gentle bubbling of a warm spring. Everyone knows that the most important thing a woman can possess is beauty, and that fits into all eyes. I am huge, big, fat, and present. Whatever you want to call it. I am dark, chocolate skin, cocoa butter, and tall with a flat nose. I am thick around the waist. I wear a size 9 shoe, and I am beautiful because I decided that this was the case. And though at times I want to make a room big enough for me, a whole lot of me, some days I want to tuck my big belly in and sit my spine straight. I want to sit right there on the bookshelf with other women whose true beauty stories can be told. Then I want every fat little girl to take me off those bookshelves, hold me, and hug me with both hands. Then open me up and hear me, especially if their thighs are as big and as fat as mine. Right? So I really love that piece. I mean, it's very visual, and it's very, this is what I am, and I'm very proud. And I mean, there are like issues, but I am like here and I'm present, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love the journey that she takes to taking up space, like in her own body, and taking up space in the world. Like, that's beautiful.
It is. It is. So what's the title of the chapter that we're doing today? Chapter 6.
So today we're doing Dreaming Ourselves Dark and Deep. Black Beauty.
Yes. So it's like, this was like the longest chapter so far for me. I don't know if you also found it long.
I did. Not just long, but also I think as equally intense as the chapter on addiction, but long and intense.
Yeah, there's like a lot. That's why I like just wanted to like dive into it, because there's like a lot to discuss, there's a lot that came out of the chapter. And I don't know. Do you want to start?
I think things that maybe just kind of an overview, or like the biggest thing that I felt like I could take away from the chapter, despite all because there's a number of different kind of aspects of beauty that she touches on throughout the chapter, but I really enjoyed the kind of overarching general theme of self-care, self-care being at the core of appreciating one's beauty. Wow, it's a lot. I think even just to start with a reading, I just feel like I just want to read the whole chapter, because she says so many things, and I just want to read it out loud.
I know what you mean, right? I know. I concur fully on that, because but actually that was also my first note. So Bell writes about the communities of resistance, right? That black women need to set up and need to be in, to actually just function with everything, with the patriarchy, with the racism, with everything that we're dealing with in everyday life. And I love that that phrase, communities of resistance, because as she writes about it, she writes about it in the sense that it's like spaces where you feel safe, you feel okay, you can like let go, right? And so I was thinking, as I was reading that part, I was thinking about Cindy Makona's To My Children's Children, and there's like a part where she writes about the past journey of, because she was a domestic worker in racist South Africa, and she was writing about a part where about the bus journey, from the township into White Sababia, and she was talking about how those journeys are always like space. They were like spaces for unlearning. Actually made it for healing and unlearning, right? Because you'd get in there and everybody would just you'd be down and everything, but everybody else will be sharing their space and everybody else will be comforting you. And by the time you get to your workplace, right? Because when you leave your house, it was she was explaining how it was like so hard to leave your house in the morning, and then by the time you get to your workplace, you're rejuvenated. You feel like I can do this, I can get through this, I can get through this day, right? And those things are important. I mean, it's that phone call, the phone calls that Belle was talking about, was writing about in the other chapter, where she was saying, she spent so much time on the phone with her community. I'm about to get bitten by a bee. So, yeah, okay.
Was it a bee?
Yes, it was a bee, and I've been bitten by.
That is such a beautiful omen. Are you serious?
Yes, I am serious.
Wow, what a lovely omen. Okay.
I feel like.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
You are?
No, I'm saying I'm sorry to interrupt, because it's interesting that we're talking about beauty, right? We're talking about beauty today, and at some point, we'll talk about it a bit later. There's a deity, a Yoruba deity named Oshun.
Okay.
And Oshun's colors are yellow and gold, and she's kind of like the patron goddess of like rivers, laughing rivers, flowing rivers, and love and beauty. And one of her things that she loves is honey, and so bees are also like an insect that is like kind of sacred to her. So I just felt like we should just say that.
Yes,
that's kind of dope.
You just schooled me, by the way. So now I know. So Oshun, deity of. She's dancing. You know what? It's not fair that you're dancing because you're not on camera. But anyway, thank you for that. I think that was my note on those communities of practice, and I'm glad that was your first note as well. That even before we get into those concepts of beauty and of where is my language, of beauty and everything else, that we must just be grounded, right, in spaces that are good for us, that are that assist us to get where we want to get.
It's so important.
Super important. And now that you've spoken about Oshun, right, I wanna read a part from the book where she says we came from a long my notes, I can't see my own handwriting. She writes we came from a long list of ancestors who knew how to heal the wounded black psyche when it was assaulted by white supremacist beliefs. Those powerful survival strategies have been handed down from generation to generation. They exist, and though a working public knowledge of them has been suppressed, we can bring this old knowledge out of dusty attics, closets of the mind, where we have learned to hide our ghosts away, and relearn useful habits of thinking and being.
Girl, do you know I highlighted exactly the same, like I highlighted exactly the same paragraph, um, because I don't even know how to articulate some of the stuff, because um, the this knowledge that she speaks about, of how to heal the wounded Black psyche and how to create these spaces that are safe for us, reminds me very much, and I mean, it is linked to a lot of what she speaks to a bit later on in the chapter as well, when she speaks about hair, is that and I was a little girl when my mom used to take me to the hair salon with her, like I'd tag along with her to go get her hair done.
Yeah.
And I remember being Gosaluning with all the women getting their hair done, all the women doing their hair. Like, the women are laughing, they're talking with one another, they're discussing this or that. It's vibrant. There's all kinds of beautiful smells in the air because of all the hair oils. There's just a general kind of happiness, that kind of occupies that space.
Yeah.
And it was such a lovely space because of that, because it's like, wow, all these aunties, like my own mom, who was extremely strict,
Yeah.
And that was the one time that I remember in particular where she was just kind of like, I don't know, man, like free, like carefree, and like, she was with her friends, like in these spaces. So it's, I love that, because it's like, especially when she writes, those powerful survival strategies have been handed down from generation to generation. It's almost as though, like, even just in that interaction, this, it's like community of caring, the practice of caring for one another, it is that kind of strategy. It's that place of like safety.
Yeah. You're reminding me of the hairdresser of Harare, and how that whole scene that you just described is like salon, right? That's how I feel. When I go, I was actually just, when I was tying my hair, I was like, I'm so tired of this hair. I need my hairstylist. I need that guy to wash my hair. I need him to fix it up. And I'm tired. But every time I go there, and I'm always there for more than an hour, and it's always so lovely, because all these beautiful women come in, and there's all this conversation, there's the laughter, right? That is just so hearty. Like, when people laugh in a salon, they laugh like for real. They're just like, and it's just, it's a vibe that you don't get anywhere else. It's just it just feels, and you look forward to it. And I don't usually go to the salon. I literally go like once in 6 weeks. But whenever I go, I'm just like, hey, today is salon day. I'm going to be there. I'm going to do the things, guys. It's going to be nice. I'm going to see my people, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Because also, this is something, so I also became obsessed. I became obsessed with natural hair, I think. I was maybe 17 the first time I cut off my relaxed hair, which is another story for another day. But it had a lot to do with Jill Scott. And seeing her music video, A Long Walk. I think that was, Let's Take a Long Walk. So it had a lot to do with that. And seeing Jill Scott on the TV, this big, beautiful Black woman with her afro and that red flower, I think it's a hibiscus even, like in her hair. And I was just like, what is this?
What is happening? This looks...
What is happening?
Yeah.
And I became obsessed with natural hair, like to the point where eventually I became a loctician myself. and also really appreciated the spaces and time. It was a privilege, really, to sit with these women who allowed me to do their hair, because it was the one time where it felt like super relaxed, like just super relaxed, and like everyone's just kind of sharing their heart, and it's super intimate, super quiet, like shoes come off, hair comes out, and it's like that feeling. I think for me as well, the best part of like hair salon spaces or salon spaces is the feeling that you have when you leave there. Yes, it's just like yes.
I look
that yes feeling. It's the best.
It is the best. You guys should see this girl, right? So I don't know why she didn't do this thing today, because she's like on such a vibe. She's just like, yes, she's like dancing and everything. So I'm just like, why am I like on this video today where she's just like all the all the energy. But yeah, so outside of hair, right? She speaks about like other types of beauties and other aspects of beauties that black women am I even thinking today that black women should like no way, guys, my English is
sort of like like embrace or think about,
please,
or...
yes, I don't know, I'm just like, my head is everywhere. And I was very excited when I read about the feet, right? Because I have like very, very wide feet. And when I read about the part about like black women having these, big I actually have like an ex-lover that used to call me Fiona, right? Because we had the same feet.
Like Shrek Fiona.
Yeah, right. Because I was like Shrek, and he was like Fiona, because we have these feet that are just like huge. So they just like, and when I read that part about the feet, about the black women like trying to fit their feet into these stiletto shoes and all, I was so comforted. I was comforted to a point where I was just like, guys, I haven't worn heels in years, and it's by choice. But also, I got to a point where I was just very uncomfortable with how I felt in heels. It was just a bit much, because at the end of it, you wear them, you go clubbing or whatever, and then at the end of it, you're just like, my feet are killing me. Why am I doing this to myself, right? But I love that part about taking care of our feet.
You're so right, because it's like, and I'm trying to kind of find where in the chapter she writes this, but I'm forgetting. But I think it's perhaps when she's leading up to the part where she speaks about the feet, and it's that thing of like just taking care of those parts of us that we so often take for granted, because it's like, oh, my feet, like I walk on my feet, I stand on my feet, I run with my feet. It's like they kind of almost, because they're almost also out of sight all the time. It's almost like you don't necessarily appreciate also how important it is to like maybe rub your own feet, and just be like, thank you, feet, I love you for doing all the work that you've done, carrying me around all this time.
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting point of reflection as well, because it's like we do so much, for ourselves, for each other. We take care of so much business. Like we're handling so much business all the time, and we're in the business of slaying all the time, that it's like, ooh, sit down, rub your feet,
soak
put some oil in your hand. Tell when, it's just taking the time out. It's the time out to do those things.
I actually can't remember when last I soaked my feet.
Girl, me
Actually.
neither.
Yeah, but then there's also the part where she speaks about just standing in front of a mirror and looking at your naked body, right? And just taking it in and just being like, hey, hello, hi, I see you. Right? Like all of you, just looking at all of you and just being like, hello, right? Is that you in there? I see you. And I mean, that took,
Hello, Rose.
hey,
Hello,
Ro,
Sketchbox. Hello,
hey,
Labs.
you know,
Hello, bye bye.
everything. And that made me feel like that made me think about, I mean, I've seen it a lot in like movies and where women would like, it would be like intimacy time and they'd like be like, keep the light off please, right? And then you're just like, why, girl, but then you've also had those days. You've also had those days where you're not feeling good about yourself, and guy just wanted to just be looking at you and you were like, no, don't look at me that way, don't look at me there, I don't feel good about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't remember which movie it is, sis. But there's a movie that I watch periodically. I can't remember. I think it's Eat, Pray, Love.
Yeah.
It's the biopic, yeah, Elizabeth Gilbert. And I think there's a part where either she's speaking or one of the other characters is speaking, and she's talking about this thing, you always feel like there's always this thing that we women have where we're afraid to show our lovers our bodies. And she asks her friend, hey, that's what it is. They've gone jeans shopping.
Okay.
And they've eaten so much that they've gained a bit of weight. And they're struggling to tie up, like to button up their jeans. And the friend is like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I don't know whether I'm feeling, she's feeling a bit insecure about her weight. And Elizabeth Gilbert says like, well, don't worry about that. When you have been naked with a young man, has he ever told you to put your clothes back on? And she's like, no. And she's like, yeah, because it doesn't matter what you look like. He's just thrilled to be in the room with a naked girl. And I was like, oh, okay, well then, hey.
Yeah, so why am I going? And have you also seen that like guys don't have that stress at all? Like guys just walk around in their nakedness, like Jay, like they don't even they're just free. They're not even like, they don't even care. They're just like, oh yeah. Feels so good to be free. And then you're just busy rolling up. You're busy like
on my body.
yeah, no, seriously, and I mean these reminders that we're worth it, we that we're beautiful, right? That like yeah, we need that we are we are good enough to be taking up these spaces are important. And let me just look through my notes and see what else I have. So there was that other part. Let me read it. I'm gonna read it, right? Because I was so excited about this part, and I felt like, yeah, let me just read it, right? So she writes, Bell Hooks writes, certainly the slaves understood better than anybody that to be able to love blackness in a white world, they had to create images, representations of their world that were pleasing to the sensibilities and to the eye. So they made quilts and dolls and all kinds of images that gave them the loving mirrors of blackness to look into and be renewed. So I read this and I was thinking about the invention of wings. There's a book by Sue Monk Kidd about it's a slave narrative, right? About these 4 amazing women, but so there's this lady Charlotte, right? Who sews, and then in her spare time and using like bits of pieces of leftover material, she makes quilts. and then she has this kilt. She has the story kilt, right? And the one day she does it in secret. She doesn't like, so her daughter Handful is seeing her do this, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And she doesn't say anything. And one day she like lays out this kilt, and it's like an entire story, and it's got there's like 12 blocks with everybody, you know, the grandmother and how they got to America, how, you know, and then Handful is looking at this and she's seeing herself, you know, she's seeing herself in there, with her mother, herself working in the field. It's so beautiful. It's like an entire, like a history. What is? Yeah, like it's like their history. You know, their life's history, as told by the mother from, you know, from even the generation where this child was not alive. And I feel like we don't have that. I feel like I don't have that personally, right? And with my, because I move around a lot and I keep very little things, right? So I don't even have things like, you know, mementos from when my oldest son was very small, because I used to literally every 6 months be moving to a new place, 6 months to a year. You know, I would be just from this place to this place, selling stuff, throwing stuff away, giving things away.
Yes,
you know, all of
yes.
that stuff. So you don't keep things to remind you of where you're coming from, right? And then we have the space aspect as well. A lot of us, you know, grew up living in like townships, you know, 2-bedroom houses, 1-bedroom houses, where there just isn't space to be keeping things, right? If you're gonna be keeping the house clean, you need to throw things out. So there's that aspect, right? Yeah, I don't know what happened to my childhood photos. Yeah, I know my mom has some of them, but I don't know where they are. So, like, you know, there'd be those things when I was growing up where my mom would sit with us. She had all these albums where she'd sit with us and tell us, this is who, and, you know, this is you when you're 2 weeks old, and what, and, you know, and I don't do that. And because also we have these digital photos, you know, that are on the phones and on the cameras, so we don't sit with our kids and just show them, and, you know, just show them their lives and our lives and all of those things, right? And we don't have those mementos. We don't have those things that have that history, those things that tell stories about us and about our lives and about the people that came before us. Yeah.
You know, as you're speaking, I'm getting goosebumps now, because all of these things that you're speaking about, keeping mementos, keeping the stories, keeping of the photographs, sharing of the stories, sharing of the photographs, these are all the things that are, I mean, they exist as part of, you know, the culture of women. So I can't remember where I read this, but I read the phrase, the culture of women, a couple of weeks ago, and I'm gonna be real with you, I use it whenever I can because I just love saying it.
But us women have a culture, right? We have our own thing.
Yes, like we have the things that are for, you know, for us, quote unquote, for us. You know, it's like knowing, understanding how herbs work, or understanding, you know, these, like, the histories of our families, like these things, and keeping these things and keeping these stories and passing them on and teaching them to others and sharing them together. It's such a privilege, and it goes back, I think, as well to what you touched on in the beginning of this podcast video, is safe spaces, like spaces for women. And there was a phrase that you had used about resistance.
Communities of resistance.
Communities of resistance.
So I lost her. Is she coming? Yeah, I lost Ngozi on the other call. There she is.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay.
yeah, just those communities of resistance. That's where those kinds of things also like come alive. Those kinds of activities come alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know, as you're talking, oh, please go on.
No,
Sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Why do you always do that? You must finish. I don't really like the sound of my own voice. I don't like listening to myself for too long, and I know I can go on. But anyway, so as you're talking, right, I am thinking, and this whole passing on from generation to generation. I'm thinking about the conversation that we had recently with my mother. There's a plane. Because it's like we're just giving birth to boys, right? Can you hear the plane?
I can hear it now, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I couldn't hear myself. But we were talking about all the boys in the family, right? And I was saying to her, oh my God, you are like grandmother to only boys. Where are the girls? Right? And when we were talking about this, she's like, yeah, you know what? I've been looking forward to like getting like pink and purple, getting dressed up, you know, with my girl grandchildren and stuff. And when we're having this conversation, I'm thinking, but you know, there are other things, you know, besides the whole matching outfits and pink and purple that we can pass on, that we should be passing on, you know, like good habits and, you know, these communities. Yeah, they're like, there's literally like a lot that we should as black women be passing on to our black girls. About loving themselves and about actually the other thing I wanted to, I don't know if I wrote it down, but there's the part, do you have your thingy open in front of you, the part about the story that she writes in the beginning of the book for the little girl.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna read it. Yes.
Please read it. Please read it out.
Let me just find it quickly. Let me just get there. It's like a creation story.
Yeah.
Like an origin story. And she writes, in a space before time and words, the world was covered in a thick blanket of darkness. It was a warm and loving covering. Since it was hard for the spirits who inhabited this space to see one another, they learned to live by and through touch. So, if you were running around lost, you knew you were found when arms reached out in that loving darkness to hold you. And those arms that held the spirits in that beautiful dark space before time are holding us still.
So she writes this creation story for a little girl, and she says, I wrote it for her because I wanted that when she like doubts you know, who she is and her beauty, that she must just remember that, you know, there's this community of, and I love how she says, she writes the creation story and calls the space a loving darkness, right? Because yeah, you know the narrative with darkness, with blackness, you know, but then she, you know, consciously calls it a loving darkness. So and it goes back to that whole, you know, you even, you know, we're dark, love your dark skin, you know, little girl, you know. And I mean, it's also that whole reading those stories where your kids can see themselves.
Oh yes, representation is so important. And there's a part where I just want to refer to my notes quickly as well, where I think she speaks about Naomi Campbell and seeing Naomi Campbell in the media, on the covers of magazines. And I mean, the book was published, I think, in the 90s, 93. And so much has changed since then. And then again, so much has still kind of remained the same.
You know? Yes.
We're seeing so much black beauty, such a range of freaking like skin tones and hair textures and heights and body types and differently able bodies. Like they're all over they're all over the media,
Yeah.
you know, and that is such. I honestly am really happy for the little girls, little brown girls growing up now, and boys
Yes.
growing up now, who are exposed to all these images of black beauty and black excellence. Because just now in the 80s and 90s, we didn't have as many images, you know, to refer to. And it's so important. Like, we really underestimate, I think we really underestimate the power of seeing ourselves on TV, seeing ourselves on the billboards, in the stories, and not just seeing ourselves, but seeing positive and elevating images of ourselves and each other, you know?
I mean, you're reminding me of how important. Woo, there's so much noise. You're just reminding. It's like breaking my concentration. But you're reminding me of how important the movie Love and Basketball was to my cousins. You know, the cousins that were like in my age group, but just a bit older, and they loved that movie. They were just like, oh my god, Love and Basketball is everything. It's everything. It's us. It's, you know. And that's what it's about, right? I mean, you know, we shouldn't be still having those conversations about, like, you know, Disney having a movie about, and the debate about Ariel being black and things like that, because it's exhausting, right? So when I see things like that, I'm just like, guys, why are we still having to, like, you know, fit ourselves into cracks and, you know, argue for why we should be here and why we should be taking up these spaces? And, you know, I mean, we're here and this is us, and I mean, there's, you know, so yeah. But also, just sticking on that topic of TV. So I don't watch a lot of TV, but I watch a lot of TV when I'm at home, right? And when I'm home, I watch a lot of TV with my mom. So we'll watch things like Date My Family, you know, all of those things, right? But we will also watch, like, my mom is very, very particular about movies. So if a movie is playing and the characters are not black, my mom will not watch it. So
Very sure, Mom.
yeah, but then I've watched so many Tyler Perry movies, guys. Like,
Yeah.
I like probably all of them. And at some point, I was just like, no, I've seen this one. Can we not watch this one? Like, let's watch something
I
else.
was waiting for the moment that Tyler Perry would come up in this conversation.
Because I was just like, oh my god, I'm like, everything black is Tyler Perry, guys. But it's like a good, because now, I would always complain, like, all the time, when I'd visit my mom and she'd do that. But I see it now. Now we're in lockdown, right? And those first 2 weeks was, yeah, like everybody, like most people, was supposed to be watching Netflix. And when I, like, scrolled through my Netflix account, which I had never used before, I then was, like, looking for black imagery, right? I was just like, if the poster was white, I was just like, no, you're not gonna tell my story. Next. And then that's how I ended up watching Greenleaf, like, literally binge watch. And now I can't even get back onto Netflix because I watched Greenleaf for, like, the whole week straight without stopping.
Sure.
But it was so real, you know. Watching that show was just so real. It spoke about all the stuff that we go through, because although I don't go to church anymore, I grew up in the church, right? and my
Yes.
family, the majority of my family is still in church, and
Yes.
so it's like black narrative, like everything's just, it was just, that series is just, it's rich in black history, and I love the what do you call it, that music and everything that comes on before the show.
Like the credits.
Yeah,
What? The opening
yeah, the
credits.
opening theme, right? And it like
Yes.
lays down the history of the church in the context of slavery, right? The land that the church is built on, the bodies, the ship, the music. So I'm just like, oh guys, that is my story. That is
That whole like history that you were speaking about, that was captured in the quilts as well. It's like, I love it. It's also really great, just just as um, just as a what am I saying? A like another suggestion. I also watched Dear White People, which was awesome, just like Netflix suggestions. And there was also a Senegalese movie whose name I'm forgetting now, which was super interesting and super different because it was like not even in the realm of. Also, the genre was like it's horror film.
Yeah.
So also the genre was kind of weird and different, and it was so wonderful to see also an African story. Because I'm not used to also consuming African content. Like, sure, like African American content that is more readily available than African content, um, which is also an interesting thing in itself. But I love that you spoke about like Greenleaf, for example, and just seeing black and brown people on TV. Because there's this also where Belle writes. She says, it's towards the end of the chapter where she says, to love ourselves, our blackness, I'll start again. To love ourselves, our blackness, we must constantly be vigilant, working to resist white supremacist thinking and internalized racism. For some of us, this means cutting down the number of hours we watch television so that we are not subjected to forms of subliminal socialization, shaping how we see the world. So it's like, it means searching for decolonized black individuals who, by the way they live and work, demonstrate their love of blackness, their care of the self. And I love that so much because it also goes back to what you were talking about when you spoke about your cousin's love for love and basketball. And also, like, I loved Love Jones as well because it's just like positive images of black people, black bodies in love, guys. Like, without the struggle and the beaten downness and the brokenness and the blood and the struggle. I really enjoy seeing black narratives and black bodies in a state of happiness and joy and love, because there are all kinds of ways that we express
Yeah.
ourselves and the beauty of who we are that is not always steeped in struggle,
True. I mean, there's a photographer that I came by on Instagram, and I'll just try get his handle again because I saw his pictures on my cousin's DM, right? And I was like, who is this? And it was just so beautiful, the guy had like black imagery, like good black imagery, in a natural setting, and it just looked so beautiful. I was just like, guys, like, this is us, this is what it means. I just want, we've got 7 minutes, right? So before we wrap up, I just want us to talk about my kids. I just like, yeah, so I'm listening to them. So
Sure.
I just want us to talk about how you the point you raised about how we are consuming, and I've gotten a lot of people that were just like, why don't you read more local books? And I mean, I was also in that crowd at like a couple of years ago. I was like, I'm gonna read 52 African books, and I didn't get through the first one, but because I'm an erratic reader, right? So I read whatever is coming my way, and I don't necessarily read what's available. I read what is relevant to me at that point in time. So I'm not, that's why I'm not really good at book club, because sometimes what people read at book club is not really what I want to read and stuff like that. But you were talking about like us consuming. I mean, what do we read, guys? Come sit here. So what we're reading now is African American literature, right? And I'm thinking about, you were saying, the fact that we're not consuming. I mean, it feels so good, right, to talk about and say we need to pass on these stories, but then there's African literature which does exactly that. Right, which does exactly that, but then we don't really consume it as much as we would like to, right? And that goes back to, I mean, I'm gonna go back into the book club setting, and when we were doing that whole reading African literature thing, how expensive it was, even on me as like a person that constantly buys books. It was so expensive to constantly read African literature, right? Because a lot of the books that we were reading were reprints, and they'd come out 250 rand, 320 rand, and you're buying those every month, and it was just a bit like much on the budget. And then you go now into the whole representation debate and buying books for children where they can see themselves, and it's sort of the same debate, that it's the same sort of narrative where the children's books are like 150 rand, at a go, and so I mean, I don't want to say it's not worth it, because definitely it is, but then I'm big on access, right? So I'm big on like a communal access type of thing, where not just I can have those books on my shelf, but like 5-10 of us can have these books on our shelves, and we can share these stories and we can talk about these stories. But it's not a reality for the majority of us to be able to afford these books, to be able to to do this that we want to do.
Girl, I feel like this is a conversation we need to take offline as well, but I love how important it is, like that idea of community access, because also like and also how like your journey from sort of concentrating only on kind of like African literature, African books, to also having a wider and sort of almost more rounded like consuming content that was more well-rounded, more international as well in nature. Because it's like, as much as it's important to have that anchoring, we don't also now exist in isolation.
No.
And there are so many things that we are all learning from each other, like culturally. I like it.
I like it. But it's also, I will say that it's also nice to have these conversations and be able to, relate some of them to local stories that we've read, right? So I like that part. But yeah, I think that was it. We are like, are we like halfway? Are we halfway?
I think today marks halfway. Yeah, today marks halfway.
Guys, okay, right? We are doing this. Halfway is like a good thing, right? For some, especially for some of us that are not really consistent. This is good.
Girl.
It's good. And yeah, from me, thank you again for tuning in, for being here. Lolo, I didn't say hi earlier, so hello. He said hi earlier at the beginning of the screening. But it'll be nice. It'll be so nice. I'm starting to really, really miss Duduetso because, you know.
Oh yes, she sent her apologies because you know the hustle as well. Because she's a businesswoman who actually her business is like she works in natural cosmetics and natural beauty products.
Yeah.
And nature based. Yes, and I was speaking to her earlier, and I was like, "Yo, sis, the way we will miss you at today's session because of your work with Nubian Seed and so like all the knowledge that she has, and I'm really interested in her her journey through beauty and choosing, you know, cosmetics, especially because it is, you know, it's the herbs that we put in our skin and the shea butter and the tea tree oil and the lavender, you know, all that stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so it really would be nice to just, you know, see more people interacting, because when she's here, she's always like every 2 minutes, like coming into the conversation, and then it's not just us, you know, it doesn't feel as lonely because sometimes it feels a bit lonely. So yeah, and I think that's it from me. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks. Bye.
Hello. Sherry couldn't hold on the whole hour.